Today, we are kicking off a fireside chat series called The Ideas for Reform. In this series, I will host experts from different industries who will provide a glide path for reforms in their own areas of expertise. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting Basant Sandooja. Basant is a managing director of Avery India for the last 11 years. He's also the president of WEMA, which is Weighing Equipments Manufacturers Association. He represents the National Committee of Capital Equipments of the CII. Basant is a technocrat and a seasoned management professional with over 4 decades of corporate experience in setting up, growing, managing, and transforming businesses. He has been instrumental in leading several multinational corporations such as BMAC Cranes, SMC Pneumatics, Compare, among others. He has also served on the boards of ITW-owned Avery Weigh-Tronix and Phenolix J-Power. Basant is a turnaround specialist and brings deep expertise in improving financial health, profitability, operational excellence, and marketing. Basant and I both serve on the CII National Task Force for Ease of Doing Business and are both passionate about doing our bit in supporting the reform agenda in the country. Welcome, Basant. Thank you so much for joining in today.
Thanks, Rishi. Thanks for all those good words, and also thank you for inviting me on this platform.
It's a pleasure. So, Basant, thank you for choosing to make yourself available for the chat today. I really appreciate it. You run a 109-year-old company, one of the leading weighing equipment manufacturers in India. The company has probably seen several generations of regulatory obligations in the last century. So let's kick off our discussion today with you providing an overview of the Legal Metrology Act. While a number of participants that we have today, they're familiar with the Act in general, but a lot of people don't realize how deeply legal metrology is important, how it has penetrated every sphere, every sector, every industry, and why it is so important to talk about reforms in this Act.
Thanks, Rishi. Yeah, I think the Legal Metrology Act is a very broad and it's very, very important in our day-to-day life. It is basically for protecting the interest of the consumer. Whenever any consumer is buying any product in any trading or in manufacturing, like as or anything, you need to make sure that consumer gets the right quality and the right quantity. In other quantity can be in terms of meters, length, volume, weight, anything. So if I talk about from that angle, if the quantities are not correct, then it can lead to the heavy losses in the company. So accordingly, normally if I say this Legal Metrology Act, prima facie covers many things. One is that packaged commodity, Second is the model approval. I'll explain later what is this model approval and all that. It also covers the numeration system. For example, anything which we count in our India, we do it hundreds and thousand and 10,000 and lakh and crore. How it is linked with the millions and billions, the other formatting system, other numeration system. So in India, it defines that this act only. This act is also specifies the general rules which are important for whether the manufacturing, trading, selling, or even the repairing the weights and measurement or any on that. And this act also, the fifth part is the national standard. We all must have read in our schools and colleges about the MKS system and the FPS system. In India, we follow that MKS system, which is the meter, kg, and the seconds. And this act is the only act which specify all those things in a written way, that what should be done and what should not be done. Now, I think that today's chat, we will focus more in terms of the weight, because I am from the weighing industry. And I would like to tell you that why weight is important for us. Right from the birth of a child, when it is on, we do the weight of the baby. That gives us how is the health of that baby. Weight is a direct parameter on that. And similarly, throughout the life, when we go to the last journey, again the wooden logs are weighed. And then weight is again important there. Now, weight is also important in any industry, right from the raw material stage to the finished goods stage and the intermediary stage. You need to weigh to understand it, that if there are any losses in between the stages, or is there the right quantity of the raw material has been received or not, or when you're selling the finished goods material to your buyers, then you are ensuring it that you are giving the right quantity. Similarly, in any process industry, even in a restaurant, if you go to a 5-star restaurant which they serves you the recipes which you ask for any item, they have to do the exact quantities of the weight, what content of, for example, if you are asking for a chicken dish, what quantity of the chicken, what quantity of the oils, what quantity of the spices which need to be added. Even if it's a slightly disproportionate on that, you will not enjoy that dish. So even right from a restaurant onwards, or to in a process industry or a pharmaceutical industry where you have to prepare some mix of the products or the chemicals, you need to do the weight there, any transaction in any company. And right from not even the, for example, toll tax, you talk about toll tax to the royalties or to the road tax, this is again on the basis of weight. And now in India, since we have been going through the privatization of the highways, we need to make sure that the health of the highways also remains good. This is only possible when we strict it and enforce it very strictly that overweight vehicles are not moving on that, so that the life of the highways goes high. So again, there the weights are required. So you can see that weight is a very important part, and hence the Legal Metrology Act is very important in each and every facet of the life. For example, even you ask for the real estate. In real estate, when you buy a property, again you have to do it in terms of the square feet and square yards. Again, those things are covered into this act. You talk about the oil and gas. When you fill up your fuel in your car, whether it's a petrol or a diesel, you have to measure it. You need to get the right quantity. Again, like as Legal Metrology Act comes into the picture. I think now you can understand in all facets of our life, Legal Metrology Act plays an important role to make sure that consumer interests are protected.
Well, it sounds funny when you say it, because we often take so many things for granted. I mean, I'm fascinated by the fact that when a child comes into the world, the first thing the doctor does is to weigh the child, and legal metrology comes into picture. And when we depart, the logs of wood need to be weighed. So deeply penetrated is this act in our day-to-day lives. Yeah. And no wonder the reform agenda is so relevant for this act. Now, Basant, why don't we talk about how the government has organized itself in order to enforce this act? Is it a central act? Is it a state act? What's the enforcement structure? How state and center come together in order to make sure that there is a structure to implement and enforce this act?
Yeah, practically this is a federal act. It's a central act. Now, central act is basically for giving the guidelines to all state governments. That we have got 28 states and 9 union territories, around 37. And each state, what it does on the basis of the guidelines which are given in the Legal Metrology Act 2009. Originally, this act was in 1976, and now we got a latest edition, like as when some changes were done in 2009. Now, this act falls under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs. This is what the parent ministry which is responsible for this particular act. And for enforcement of this act, the different state governments comes into the picture. On the basis of the guidelines which are laid down in this act, all state governments, they make their own rules, sometimes even the legislations also. Now, and then as similarly, to enforce it, some type of SOPs also, so that SOPs are exactly in line with the central act. Maybe we talk later, and when the unfortunate part is, so there is a gap practically. What is the tendency of the central act, how it should be uniformly applied, that really doesn't happen. So we'll talk further on that.
So there is
now besides center, from the central government, there is a director legal metrology, which basically is the day-to-day affairs, like as who handles to all the queries on the Legal Metrology Act. And then in states, we have got something called controllers, and then there are deputy controllers and assistant controllers, and down the line it goes up to the inspectors, which are also called the LMOs, the legal metrology officers. So there is a fleet of almost, I think, 1,500 LMOs spread all over the India. Since we have got around 749 districts, almost in each district 1 or 2 LMOs are there. And these LMOs basically ensure the implementation of the Legal Metrology Act. So there are different steps in that, and the enforcement of that act in spirit has to be done by these LMOs.
Excellent. Now, We all know the world is becoming more and more competitive by the day. There is a global race to bring new and improved products, new and improved versions of existing models to the market. You are one of the leading manufacturers in this space. Tell us a little bit about what does it take to launch a brand new product or a new model in India today? How quickly can you actually bring a product to the market, and where do the regulations come into picture?
Yeah, I think your question is quite valid. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't happen very quickly and all that, The expectation, especially in these days, the government of India is doing a lot of steps in terms of ease of doing business. But this is the one area where, again, needs a lot of steps to be done. If I explain you the total steps, if you want to manufacture and when you want to sell and weights are measured, any weighing equipment, the very first step is that in case you want to import something, you need an import license for weights and measurement. Like as otherwise, if you have to import something, you don't need license, but here you need a specific license for the import of weights and measurement. Once you did that step, and since you're talking about the timeline wise, I will say that when you apply for it, it will take at least 2 to 3 months, for getting that import license. And then thereafter, second step is that model approval. Any weights and measurement variant, any variant, when you have to manufacture or when you have to sell it, you need to get the model approval in India. This model approval is done by the director, legal metrology. And then basically they do the testing of that product in their labs. So there are 5 RRSLs, which are called the reference standards labs, and these labs are based in Bhubaneswar, Ranchi, Faridabad, one is there, and so on. Once the product is tested, thereafter they will give the model approval to manufacture that product. And practically, from my experience, I can say that model approval process takes around 5 to 6 months. And once you take the model approval, then there you need a manufacturing license. In case you want to manufacture and weight and measure, then you need a manufacturing license. And if you have got a manufacturing license, then even if you want to sell it, you need a dealer license to sell the weights and measurement.
So
even
does
a
it
manufacturer
mean
need
that,
a dealer license.
So does it mean that if I, as a manufacturer, am manufacturing some machines or I'm importing some machines, so if I'm importing, there is an additional import license. But if I'm manufacturing a machine and want to launch a new version or new model of the machine, after I have done my internal work around designing the model and doing a proof of concept and everything, there is a period of about 5 to 6 months where the approval is required to come from the regulator.
Yes, that is what that process is called, model approval.
Excellent. So and once that approval comes, then there is a manufacturing license to actually manufacture that model.
Exactly. So after manufacturing license, you need a dealer license. So even to sell. Now there are 2 types of selling only. Supposing there is some manufacturer in weights and measurement who is manufacturing the capital equipment, like a weighbridge, is a big ones, Then he need only 1 license. Maybe he can sell it to all over India. But if by chance you have got in a smaller scales, retail scales, for example, then in case you have to sell all over India, you need the district-wise license of the dealer license. Not only that, once that you have sold it and you want to service it, or you want to service the other products also in the similar line, you need a repairer license. You can imagine it that normally it is a state-wise and then it's a district-wise. Now, it's so complicated. Sometimes the district-wise, they even specify that you have to take the skilled manpower from that state only. There are few states in India, those are doing it. If I club the whole together, there's a period of 12 to 24 months in case you decide to manufacture and sell some weights and measure in India. This is what the time frame which is required.
So it's interesting that you say that. Does it mean that every state requires you to take a district level licensing for repairer or dealer? Because the way I understand it, Basant, there are really 4 or 5 major stakeholders in this industry. One, of course, is the end user, the person who's consuming this equipment, right? A grocer, retailer, distributor, people who are actually the users of the equipment. The second is people who are selling this product, right? And we call them the dealers. These are the people who are buying from a manufacturer and selling it to people. The third is repairer and maintenance crew, which actually does the work of repairing and maintaining this. That's a separate entity which actually is affected by this act. Yeah. Fourth is a manufacturer, which actually is in the process of designing, importing this equipment and actually getting it to the market. And the fifth is the government, who is in the business of enforcing it, implementing it, supporting it in order to protect the consumer interest. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you being a manufacturer and you have deep expertise on the subject because you have been in business for 109 years, tremendous amount of R&D, international exposure, multinational company, some of the best practices that come from there. Are you, as a manufacturer, allowed to freely sell and repair the equipment that you produce throughout the country, or do you need repairer and dealer license in addition to a manufacturer license? That's first. Second, can you repair other manufacturers' machines? And what is the regulatory obligation there?
Yeah. As a manufacturer, I can manufacture and sell anywhere in India. I don't need an repairer license in case I want to repair my own product. But normally, sometimes in India, if they have got 2 or 3 different makes of the weights and measure, the user prefers, to have one person who maintains all that. Because this is a product which needs to be regularly maintained in terms of the calibration so that, you're doing the accurate weighing, for example. From that angle, in case you want to do the servicing or the repairing of the product which is manufactured by someone else, then you need a repairer license. And that repairer license goes the district-wise even. Supposing someone is in the field of providing a service to all over India level, maybe he has to go as high as maybe 749 repairer license in each district.
That's funny you say that. 749 different licenses. Now, do they need some frequent or some periodic renewal, or is it you take it one time and be done with it?
It needs periodic renewal. Earlier it was 1 year, and thanks to the government thinking now, because they have done it in some cases, they are doing even 5 years also, and some cases they're 2 years. Now, this is the main question: is there's no uniformity state-wise.
Excellent. So one clear point that is emerging from here is different states have gone ahead and implemented the act in different ways. There is no uniform or standard interpretation of the act and rules. There is a subjectivity to its interpretation and enforcement. Some states enforce it at a state level. Some states request enforcement at a district level. As a dealer, as a repairer, in some states you could have a single state level license and you're good. In some other states, you actually need to go down to the district level. Technically, there are 749 districts. So in theory, if you want to do a national business, license becomes a huge impediment. Thanks to the government, we've actually enhanced it from 1 year renewal to many years now in many cases. But still, definitely we think that this licensing regime needs a rethink, and we should rationalize whether this is actually required, or should we allow dealers and repairers to do national business without such detailed lower level licensing requirements?
Yeah, it adds with a lot of complexities, Now, if you really go into the further depth, getting a repairer license is not only getting a repairer license. You need to have a premises. They would like to have some address that to the locally in that district and all that, Some states are doing it state-wise. That is still okay. But even imagine if there's a service provider which is on the national-wise, in each state he need an office. He cannot afford to that extent. And this is how they become uncompetitive. So ultimately it adds to the cost. These days, when people can work from home, we have seen it with the pandemic. So why can't people can work from home and they can go and do the repairing job or the servicing job of the weights and measurement?
Absolutely.
You don't need any office, but this is mandatory. When they ask for the repairer license, they ask for address local.
And in one of the earlier points, you had mentioned that there are certain states in the country which actually require a local domiciled person to be servicing a machine. I mean, I have no idea why within the country we would have a licensing requirement or where you actually need a local person of local domicile to prove his worthiness of maintaining a machine. Why can't we provide a national level capability where anybody from any part of the country, if they have a license, they can actually repair any machine? Why domicile would add any value to their ability to work?
Exactly. It's an unnecessary complexity. You can see that, today the multinational companies, if I talk about, sometimes they were in a regional hub outside the country. For example, Singapore can be the regional hub for the Southeast Asian countries. Mm-hmm. So maybe the one service guy will attend to all. So if you have to meet such type of requirements, that's not possible. So if it is possible in other machines, why not in the weights and measurement? Why weights and measurement need those complexities?
So certainly, I mean, it seems like this is a low-hanging fruit. The government should pay attention to this aspect, revisit this licensing requirement. One clear outcome that's coming out is standardized enforcement and implementation. No two LMOs should interpret the law differently from each other. So that's something that needs to be done. What do you think?
Yes, positively. There are so many. I think this has got a lot of potential in terms of the improvements to remove the complexities.
So there's another important point here, right? We all are so used to buying electronically now, right? Buying on Amazon or Flipkart or some of the retail online channels come naturally to us. It's more convenient, it's more cost effective. There's a door-to-door delivery. You get a diversity of crores of products to choose from. It's just easy, right? It's time effective. Now, in a scenario like this, where you need a dealer license and retailer license and all of this, how does the online market work in your industry? Or does it even work?
I don't sell it online, but to the best of my knowledge, I think it has got the same requirement. Even if someone is selling the weights and measurement online, he will have to have the dealer license.
So I think the law needs to keep pace with times. The world around us is changing. The way we hail cabs, the way we order food, the way we book our, tickets, everything is changing.
Exactly.
Going electronically and buying things electronically. And if the license regime is so complex, it inhibits a retailer from using electronic methods to sell at least the lower end machines. I would agree that the large toll kanta may still require local level, intervention.
No, I think from that angle, Rishi is correct. When we talk, there are two types of weights and measurement, weighing machines. One which goes fully assembled from the factory. In such cases, this is also possible that this gets the verification and the stamping part in the factory itself. The other products like this toll kanta, which are normally called the weigh bridges, these weigh bridges get installed on the site because they go in an unassembled condition. And these are assembled on the site, and after assembling, you have to get the verification and the stamping done by the LMOs at site only.
Sure. Okay.
But yes, if I talk about a smaller product, on one hand, for smaller product, if some trader is selling from his shop, is a small shop in a district, he need a dealer license. On other hand, when talk about the e-commerce, he can sell to across 749 districts from one place. Like as there is a gap here which we need to address. We need to address all those points.
Sure. Now, let me take two scenarios for you, right? The first scenario is I'm a grocer, a small-time grocer having a small grocery store in one of the neighborhoods, right? And I buy a small weighing scale. Question for you. Does Legal Metrology Act of 2009 affect me? And do I need to take some license or some stamping or some certification from someone? Or are there any periodic renewal requirements?
As a user, no, you don't have to take any license. But it is your responsibility if you buy initially a product. For example, earlier days, those they were selling the milkman was selling milk, and you got in a container of 1 liter with which he measures it. Even that is also supposed to be stamped. In normal weight, which in small grocer or in a vendor, street hawker, when he is using that, even that is also supposed to be done. Now, this is a stamping activity which is supposed to be done twice in a year, after 2 years once, basically. That is a responsibility, but they don't need any license. You're supposed to periodically.
So let me change the word here. Let me change the word. So I'm a grocer. I bought a weighing scale. So I don't need a license, but I need some stamping. Is that what it is? Okay. So tell us a little more. How do I get this stamping? Where do I have to approach? What coordination is required? Do I have to take my machine to someone for stamping, or they come to my office and stamp? What's the process there?
Yeah, this is what the actual complexity is. You are supposed to take the machine to a legal metrology office, and then they will stamp it. Even the weights also. In some areas,
what is the intention? Why this has become so complex? I mean, a machine is already certified. The manufacturer is certified. The model is certified. manufacturer already has a license, the dealer who's sold it has a license. Now the machine is in the hands of the end user. Are you saying at this point, when I've purchased this machine, now I have to look for a legal metrology officer, take my machine to his office and get him to stamp it before I can start using it? Is that how I should interpret this?
The objective behind is correct. Objective is that, supposing you have got some weight and measurement, and during the usage that weight is reduced, and then if you are using that reduced weight, or which is not the correct weight, and you are doing all your transactions with that, then it may change, and a user can have an effect on that. But from the other perspective, in terms of the complexity and all that, instead of the government, it should be allowed by the private people, basically. Those who are the manufacturers of those weighing equipment, they should be able to calibrate and certify that. If you talk about the other cases, for example, in dimensional metrology, I got a measuring tape with me. Even that is also supposed to be calibrated, because to make sure that, this is always traceable to the local standard and the national standard and the international standards. From that aspect, it's a good practice. But in dimensional metrology, government has allowed to use the private labs, wherein you can get your product calibrated and stamped, basically. Not stamped, but calibrated. For example, you are using a voltmeter and ammeter. Okay, that can be calibrated by the private labs. But for weights, it is not. Ultimately, you have to need the stamping by a government official. So there is a
brand new machine. A machine that has just come out of a dealer's shop, and dealer is licensed, right? And the manufacturer who has sold it to dealer is also licensed. For the first time use, do I need any stamping, or can I start using it?
If it is a small product which is coming from a manufacturer or a trader, and he is sent it but duly stamped, then you don't need to do that. For smaller products, they allow it. For example, up to 150 kg, they allow it. The manufacturer can get it stamped again from the legal metrology officers.
So manufacturer has to do it
themselves. They cannot certify themselves. They have to get their stamp from a legal metrology officer, because he's selling an assembled scale, and then it can be used by the user without going through any hurdle.
Okay. Now, is there an opportunity for reform here?
Yes. Again, as I said in the beginning, all states use different SOPs. In spite of the Central Act, in spite of the notification being given by the Director of Legal Metrology, sometimes in some states they objected, that in case this is being sold from state A to state B, so state B has lost its revenue in terms of the CST and all that. Since now it is GST, thanks to that, so this anomaly is removed. So exactly the way the GST has made it the one nation, one tax, similarly in this area also we need to do a lot of changes. So one nation, one rule, and in terms of the Legal Metrology Act.
Excellent. Now, Basant, India has grown rapidly. We are now among the top 5 largest economies in the world. We have set an ambitious target to be among the top 3 in the world. We're looking to achieve a $10 trillion GDP very shortly at the end of this decade, particularly. And if that has to happen, and the way you explain how deeply penetrated legal metrology is in our lives, we can easily expect the number of equipments around weights and measures to multiply exponentially over the years. And the way I understand it, there are various kinds of licenses at various levels, including stamping of every machine above a particular threshold by a legal metrology officer. How is the government capacity, right? Is the government capacity keeping pace to meet these demands? Is it stagnant? What kind of time periods are required? What kind of coordination overhead is there to get a hold of an officer and get your stamping or recalibration done? Tell us a little more about
that. If I give you a rough idea, I believe there are around 1,500 approximately legal metrology officers available in the country. So because 2 are 1 in each state, Now, and if I give you the rough idea, how many in quantity the weights and measures, whether the weighing equipment or the weights which has to be done, it will be almost 50,000 plus per inspector or per legal metrology officer. Now, those guys also get involved in terms of issuing the licenses, also the complexity of the licenses. They are also involved in terms of the verification, both the first-time verification for the weights and measurement which are assembled on site, as well as the re-verification. So there is a lot of things which they are supposed to do it. And as per that, I will say the government is not equipped. And especially when we are talking about—
Did I hear it right? 50,000 equipments per officer? Did I hear it right?
Yes, yes.
And there are, assuming 250 working days in a year, and an officer is supposed to do multiple things. One of them is to stamp new machines, and another one is to certify old machines so that they can be used, right? I mean, am I getting it right?
Yeah, you are right. That is why
Are we
you have to
talking
wait.
about 200 devices being touched in some form or shape on a daily basis?
Yeah, yeah. We come across such type of cases at times. Even that complaint get escalated to me, because sometimes, as a manufacturer, it becomes our responsibility to get that machine verified and stamped. Because if a user has spent, say, 2 million rupees and he wants to use it, and especially for the greenfield projects, because if it is not stamped, he cannot use it. So, but because of the non-availability, because of the delay in terms of the LMO or the inspector to come on the site to verify it, it gets delayed for a couple of weeks sometimes.
But it seems like a genuine problem. I mean, there is no problem of intention. If an officer has to take care of 50,000 machines, give or take, depending on where they are located, I mean, I feel sorry for them, because if they have to deal with so much workload and there are only one or two LMOs, legal metrology officers in a district, they are running from pillar to post like headless chickens. So it's not a matter of intention, it's a matter of system design.
Yeah, you're right. Totally, you're right. That is why the role of the government should be in controlling and making sure the act is implemented honestly. In case you get involved into each and every minor activity, I don't think that really serves the purpose. I can understand there is some interest in terms of the revenue part also, but then revenue which the government gets in the form of a stamping fee and whatnot. I believe the government should certainly charge that revenue, but authorize the private manufacturers or the experts, those who are experts. If someone can manufacture a machine, he has calibrated, why can't he service and certify that, yeah, this machine is okay?
Absolutely. Now,
take the another case. For example, in case of the pollution of the vehicle, earlier it used to be in the RTO only. For the last couple of years, government has liberalized it. These days, anywhere and everywhere, even on the road also, you will find it where you can get your pollution checked and you can move on. Exactly on the same line, why not in the weights and measurement can also be done?
absolutely. I mean, couldn't agree more with you. And this seems like such a logical thing to do. And from what I know, Basant, wasn't such an initiative in terms of GATC, government approved test centers, launched sometime back in 2013-14 timeframe, or am I not right there?
Yeah, I will say that I really appreciate the government of India, because they have got a lot of steps. They have been thinking in that direction. But unfortunately, there is a delay. As you rightly said, in 2013, they had taken a decision, and even it was put into the act also, that they will approve the GATC, which has got government approved test centers. Now from 13, today we are 21. In 8 years, it was not implemented. So now, even if, as on date, I will say, even if they implement it, the term specified in that GATC Act is that up to 150 kg of scales only.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are more than 150 kg of scales, then they are not allowing the GATC. My personal opinion is that as on date, in case government wants to implement it, they should revise that GATC Act, because that was from 2013. And today in 2020, they should allow all types of machine to be done by the GATC and all that, government approved test centers.
So one of the clear recommendations for reform that's coming out in this discussion, Basant, is GATC, which was originally planned to go live sometime in 2013-2014 timeframe, should be revisited in the light of the capacity requirements at central and state levels. It should be redesigned, reimagined, and relaunched with an aggressive time frame, so that what we accomplished as a country for pollution control, or PUC as it is called, where every place you go to, every highway that you go to, you find a small chotu sitting with small equipment, which has created thousands of micro entrepreneurs. It has created job opportunities. Government has done a fantastic job in creating a framework, linking it to systems, processes, linking it now directly to RTOs. And that certificate that the chotu issues you is valid throughout the country. I haven't come across a single instance where a traffic police inspector would stop you and would look at that certificate and say, no, I don't believe in this, because this was issued by a guy who's not domiciled in my state, or this was issued by some private party. So I think that system has come of age, and I would highly recommend that that be used as a template for creating a huge amount of government capacity so that an LMO, legal metrology officer, whose original job is to protect the consumer interest, does not end up becoming a bottleneck inadvertently.
Exactly. That is what it should be basically. And I'm sure this can be easily done. And especially I will say that in these days, for the last 5-6 years, the government has been taking those initiatives in terms of ease of doing business. And I also see some movement, in terms from the WEMA, since I represent that Weighing Equipment Manufacturers Association, we had some meetings both through the CII. I can see some movements happening. Ease of doing ministry or DIPT, they are now recommending some changes. But again, it is taking a lot of time. I think we need to go on a fast track on this.
Excellent. Now, let me switch gears here, right? You are one of the leading manufacturers in India. How easy it is for you to actually export? Is export an option? Is it easy to export? Are our models fungible around the world? Do they meet local regulatory expectations, or you need to do a lot more work in order to manufacture something which is export ready?
Yeah. Look, I will say that if you see the call of Prime Minister, which is the Atmanirbhar Bharat, and specifically he is emphasizing that we should think of how we can export more, and local and the local product as per the global standards. From that call, even in this field, we need a lot of areas of improvement. I, as a manufacturer, and in Avery Weigh-Tronix, I'm exporting, I'm exporting a good number of products. But how I'm exporting? Because I'm following the global standards. One, secondly, that I have got my product approved by an international labs. There's an organization called OIML in the France. So our product is approved by that. Because even if I'm to export from here, I need to go there in France and get that product approved from there. Only then I can sell in the European market and other things.
So does it mean every new model needs to be supported, or every new product has to be certified? What's the...
Yeah, we have to send the product there. They test it thoroughly, and then they issue the certificate. And then it is called OIML certified. Now,
and does that also take 5 to 6 months, like how Indian environment is?
Yes. Not only that this time, even the money also. So what I feel, there are 1 or 2 steps which we can do. Those are ideas. One is that when we talk about our RRSLs, our reference standards laboratories, these should be accredited by the international labs. So that both, in case we have got RRSLs, same standards as the international labs, then the product tested and accepted by an RRSL should be accepted by the international lab also. Similarly, in case we have done BIS, for example, our Indian standards, if the product is certified as per the BIS, this should be acceptable to others also. I know because I have done the interaction with the BIS, and they have been working in many areas to make sure that the standards are interchangeable, or even BIS standards should be exactly in line with the international standards. But from manufacturer angle also, because unless this product is not approved, today, as far as the weighing field is concerned, no, if my product is only approved in India, or I got a model approval on the basis of which I cannot go and sell in the global market. I need to get that approved. So from that angle, it is must that this all our labs, local labs, and the BIS, which is a standard institute, those should have the interchangeability and the traceability from the international standards and international labs.
So just to summarize, a clear idea for reform here is to homogenize and standardize the overall standards that our labs have with global standards, so that the products that we manufacture in India are automatically ready to comply with international standards, and they can be sold anywhere else in the world. Now, to me, it doesn't sound like a very difficult thing, because we have created our own set of standards. Time has come where we want to make India an export destination, and it should be one of the key steps to be taken.
Exactly. I'll just give you an example. If the product is OIML approved, then they accept the same standard in India as it is. Because of that, they will approve it. But why not the vice versa? It should be vice versa also, because if the product is tested and made in India as per the global standard, then it should be acceptable to the OIML and the rest of the world also. This is where from the government should facilitate such things through the government institutions like BIS and the RRSLs and others.
So it sounds like ये वो सीढ़ियां हैं जो ऊपर तो जाती हैं लेकिन नीचे नहीं आती.
Yeah.
Well, just changing gears a little bit here. When I'm not working, I like to travel and do a lot of photography, and that basically means pick up my SUV and drive around the country.
Okay.
Right. And when I drive, I come across a lot of these toll kantas or way bridges, as they're popularly known as. And I often wonder, they actually have such large equipment to weigh 100 tons and so on and so forth. If a legal metrology officer has to actually go and test them, right, whether they are cheating or they have the right calibrated way bridge or something like that, how would they do the testing? I often wonder, what's a test mechanism?
Yeah, look, even again, there's a complexity. If I talk about the Legal Metrology Act, and if I talk about the directions given by the Director Legal Metrology, it specifies that you are supposed to have 10% of the weights.
Mm-hmm.
The machine is for the way bridges for 100-ton capacity. I'm supposed to keep 10%, that means 10-ton weights with me. Okay, so that in the legal metrology officer comes and with the help of those 10-ton weights, he can test it, calibrate it, and then issue the stamping certificate to that.
So you're supposed to actually keep 10 tons at site?
Exactly. Now,
And
this is not
10
only
tons
the
cannot be lifted just by a person and put on the bridge, right?
Yeah. Rishi, my concern is that different states adopt different SOPs. In the Central Act, it is mentioned 10%, but then there are few states, those who even insist for 33%. Imagine I have bought an equipment to weigh 100-ton capacity. I am supposed to keep 33 tons of the weights with me, which is a dead investment.
So 33 tons of weight translates into how many lakhs of rupees in working capital?
Huge. So it is almost, I would say that
50-60 rupees a kg at least.
Almost 1/3 of the cost of the weighing equipment.
So you're talking about tens of lakhs.
Yes, and that is a dead investment.
That's a dead working capital blocked, sitting in a huge piece of iron or whatever it is, because somebody will come someday, use that weight in order to calibrate or test your equipment. Is that what it is?
Normally once in a year. So
for once in a year testing, you're sitting with a dead working capital of tens of lakhs just because it is prescribed in the law.
Yeah.
Tell me, how do other countries do it? I mean, are they doing it the same way? Different states have different enforcement standards. LMOs can just come and ask randomly for a specific weight. What do US, Canada, UK, some of the other developed world does?
Yeah, normally, what we are doing in India is that 20 kilo weights, and in case you have to use it for 10 ton, you can understand that there'll be almost 500 weights, So 500 weights to be manually placed on the weigh bridge, weighted on different locations, and then move it back and then do it to and fro, It's almost 1 or 2 days goes in that exercise. Now, what happens in the other countries, they have got a test vehicle. It's a pre-known vehicle where the weights are loaded on that of a capacity of 10 ton or 15 ton, whatsoever maybe. The vehicle comes, simply weigh that vehicle, and it goes back. In India also, a few states have done that. They have gone in that direction, but nothing is happening on that. Some states even got it as a gift, but for example, we saw it in the West Bengal. They got it as a gift, and they have not been able to use even a single day also. So these are the drastic steps which we need to take it. It not only helps to the entrepreneur to reduces the dead investment in terms of the weights. Secondly, different states adopting different SOPs. One state says 10%, another state says that 33%.
So, it seems like such a brilliant idea, right? I mean, have a pre-loaded truck with variety of permutations and combinations of weights. The legal metrology officer actually is a part of the truck. Wherever he or she wants to drive, they go with the truck, do their testing and move on.
Even legal metrology officer is also not. If you're talking about the other countries, because we have got our parent company in the UK, and we have got our own test trucks. So we carry our test truck, we calibrate the product, we test it with that, and we certify it there itself.
So that is another example of a GATC in action. A government-approved test center where the manufacturer owns the truck, owns the weights. So, I mean, it's Uberization of the testing model.
Exactly.
And what stops us from doing that in India?
Slow hierarchy. And I said, when I'm talking about this act, 76, this is almost 50 years old act. And today also in the field of the legal metrology or in field of the weights and measurement, I will say that we are fully occupied with the licenses and the inspector Raj.
So of course, it's very clear that an MSME which owns that weighbridge, cost of capital is very high. We already know that. Access to capital is one of the key binding constraints for growth and expansion in India. And in the middle of this scenario, if you have to spend lakhs of rupees in blocked working capital in a piece of iron that produces no value for your business, but regulations require you to carry that load, I think that whole process requires a serious rethink.
Yes, it
Excellent.
required a lot of drastic changes.
On that subject, while we are on the international subject, are there best practices from various developed countries that we can adopt as a country and start working in that area?
Yeah, why not? I will say that when I explained you all the systems of import license, model approval, manufacturing license, then dealer license, then the repairer license, I will say the one step can do it. If you want to check it initially, maybe you simply retain a model approval. There's no need of import license on that. There's no need of the manufacturer license. Any manufacturer should be able to manufacture it and all that. And then similarly, the privatization is required in further testing. So in case we do that, the life will become very easy, not only for the manufacturer and the service provider, but for each and every industry and each and every user.
Sure. And what happens to, so one thing is weights and measures are not only required for the end user at the time of sale or what have you, but internally in your processes also. So for example, if I'm a food manufacturer, in my processing, there are so many areas where I'm weighing items. Do those equipment also fall under the act, or they don't belong?
They also fall under the act. Yes.
And they also need certification?
Normally, this is called for the non-trade application because you are not trading it with the outside party or outside buyer, but you are doing it within the organization. But in other countries, they have classified for the non-trade application and for trade application. And for non-trade, they are not stringent on that. So in India, they do it even for that also. The first time they have to do it, but in some cases, there's ambiguity on that. But in other cases, again, interpretation of each LMO or each state is different.
Mm-hmm. So we are in the last leg of our conversation, Basant. Let me take this opportunity to announce that the audience should engage with us now. There's a Q&A box that they will see at the bottom of their screen. Folks, you probably heard a lot of deep insights on the Legal Metrology Act, its application, its implementation, enforcement, various kinds of challenges. Please shoot questions. If you have any, use the Q&A box for that. So Basant, while we wait for some questions to come in here, why don't you tell us a little more about some of the international best practices? So of course, licensing needs to be reviewed, right? Do we need so many licenses?
I will say that in short, I can give you the 5 main points. Mm-hmm. One is that one nation, one rule. Yes, sir. It's as simple that why state-wise the rule should change. Because
absolutely,
each state wants the consumer interest to be protected. And there's a central act. So why we should not have a standard SOPs to be followed by each state exactly in the same way, instead of they make their own legislation and own the SOPs.
So standardize the interpretation and remove ambiguities, standardize enforcement, so that whether you're practicing it in Andhra or you're practicing it in Rajasthan, the consumer interests are at the center of the act, and the enforcement is done in a way so that it does not put additional burden on the impacted parties.
Yeah. Second is that since the act is very old, and especially in the last 30 years of the liberalization in India, I think we need to liberalize the act also. We need to make sure that why so many things. Why can have one license? You call it model approval, you call it manufacturing license, you call it the trading license and all that, for weights and measurement, so that all the information about that seller is recorded in that. And then he should be able to trade it or manufacture it and sell it all over the country.
Sure.
So only one. Such type of changes which are prevalent in the other parts of the world also, those should be implemented. Some review of the few changes in the act are also required on that. Third point is that all BIS and RRSLs, standards, as I said, those should be internationally accredited, so that the acceptance of the Indian institutions, whether the BIS or the reference laboratories in India, the product should be readily accepted by the other labs also. Mm-hmm. And this is happening in many other areas also, not in the Legal Metrology Act. For example, if you are selling an electrical equipment, they also do it. There are many labs in India for electrical equipment, which are tested here as it is accepted there in the other countries, and whether
Sure.
it's in Europe or in any other part of the world.
So,
fourth point is that GATC.
Spending another second on this, if India has to become a hub of manufacturing and a hub of export, this is going to become a binding constraint, right? We need to do this urgently so that we can homogenize, standardize our standards with the international standards. Otherwise, manufacturers are going to continue to waste a lot of time, energy, effort, and money in trying to get their equipment certified first in an Indian lab to launch it in an Indian market, and then with a European lab to launch it in the European market.
Yeah. For example, if you see that there's a CE mark, if you want to sell any electrical equipment or a simple consumer product, if you have to sell in export, if it is not CE mark, they will not buy it. So even the Indian exporter has to get it approved there. So if that is approved in India and they are equally acceptable in the other parts of the world, then the life for the exporter becomes easy. And this is where the government should facilitate it.
Excellent.
And the fourth idea is that GATC, as we said, both for the smaller scale as well as for the bigger ones also, as is the way. And fifth idea, I will say that minimum standards of accuracy, those also need to be defined. As I know it about the weighing industry, in weighing industry, different type of products are available in the market. Mm-hmm. Yes, in spite of having that all complexities, the manufacturer A is selling and weighing equipment with a minimum accuracy, and manufacturer B is selling with the highest accuracy. So there is no definition and there anywhere in the law which says that you should define it and this is what the minimum standard which is acceptable. In case we have to enhance the industry standard in India, then I think some different classes of specification should be done here in India also.
Absolutely. And from my side, I do want to add a couple of items. As Avantis, we have been flag bearer of the reform process for a while. We constantly talk about process with rationalize, simplify, digitize, and decriminalize. Rationalize is basically reduce the compliance burden, make sure you revisit all the acts and all the compliances, and figure out if those are the optimal number of compliances. And if not, then remove all the duplications, remove the overlaps, remove the redundancies, and so on and so forth. And we think from our experience, Basant, that number can come down to as high as 50%. So the compliance burden of 1,536 acts with 69,233 compliances can literally be brought to half just by doing a thorough rationalization. Now, from what I understand, we have a lot of criminal proceedings within the Act going up to jail term, going from a few months to a few years, right? And that also needs a review so that not everything can send an entrepreneur or an enterprise owner to a jail, and we can rationalize the amount of criminalization that is prescribed in the Act. Yeah. Standardization, which we also call as simplification, is another one where if you have a national ambition, then the need for interpretations, ambiguities in interpretations and enforcement come down. Your blocked working capital can be cleaned up. An officer can move with the required testing equipment. GATCs can help reduce the government burden. So government officers actually spend a lot of time in protecting consumer interest rather than only certifying new machines and recertifying old machines.
You are absolutely right.
So I think, great bunch of ideas, and I hope some of the policymakers listen to this conversation or its recording. The recording will be available shortly, but these are all the ideas that if we focus on them, we can easily remove the regulatory bottlenecks, remove the regulatory cholesterol in this Act, make it user-friendly, and have it define and protect the interest of the consumers.
I'm quite optimistic. I think the way the government is working and thinking in that direction, I hope something should happen positively.
Sure. So there are a few questions. I think from a conversation perspective, we have kind of come to an end. What's the involvement of third parties for testing, recalibration, and stamping in the compliance burden? That's a question from Sakshi. So inspection and certification by third parties is already allowed. Not covered by legal. Can the working of third parties be regulated by the government? So again, I think, Basant, the question is around GATC. We already answered this earlier that GATC as a concept is available. However, it has not yet been rolled out. From my understanding, I think that not a single third party has been given an authorization to go ahead and do testing yet in 7 years.
None of the state has implemented.
There's another question. There was a talk that privatization of legal metrology is underway a few years ago. Has it happened? Answer is it has not happened so far. GATC is really the answer to that question. Just like PUC has created capacity and infrastructure, government approved test centers in legal metrology will probably do the same thing.
Yeah.
There's another question. Do manufacturers need repairer license for installing your own product at the time of sale?
No, a manufacturer don't lease a repairer license for repairing his own product. He don't need it and all that.
Okay. Related question.
Even if, like I said, I got one on all over India basis on his factory, so then he can manage in all the states and all that. But if you want to repair the product of other manufacturers, then you need it state-wise licenses.
Got it. Another question here related. Do the dealers need repairer license for installing the products that they sell?
Repeat it.
Do the dealers need a repairer license for installing the product that they sell?
No. Dealer is basically for doing the trade transactions only, and he can install it, but again certifying in terms of the stamping, if it is not pre-stamped in the factory, then you have to go to the LMOs.
Sure. Another question is, are you suggesting a single license for large-scale manufacturers which enables manufacturing, service, installation, importing, exporting, and so on? Are you recommending that?
Yes, because government had been advocating those type of thoughts in many other areas. They're trying to link the Aadhaar with the PAN and everything, one registration on everything. And here also it should be. If there is a one manufacturer, one registration should be good enough.
And we've seen that happen in the labor reforms recently as the codification of 29 central labor acts has been done. Government has gone ahead and for each code, there is going to be a single registration, single license now, as against 10, 15 in some cases.
Yeah.
Another question, do the states have the power to give tenders to private companies to provide test weights throughout the state?
I don't have the exact answer to that, but I believe it should be, because enforcement of the act is the state government responsibility.
Sure. Is the government still considering the same, which will be the first step towards streamlining the ease of stamping process? I think it's again on the GATC.
Exactly. Yeah.
So a lot of excitement around.
Manufacturer can certify themselves. Yeah.
Right. Prabhakar is asking, after installation, we are handing over for the customer. I think there are some spelling mistakes here. Standard test weight. Any other option is there without standard weights? Any electronic device? I think Basant already answered that. There are best practices laid out in the rest of the world where
vehicles.
So first of
all,
vehicles
are the best solution. Yeah.
Test vehicle is one with the officer, and then test vehicle with the manufacturer who can do the certification on their own.
Yes.
Okay. Chaitanya is asking, with privatization of testing and calibration process, how should government address audit of their masters?
In any field, even if I talk about the dimensional metrology, if there is a lab in my company and all those masters have to be calibrated by an outside party, and then you follow the traceability with the national and the international standards. Same way it should be here. The traceability can be followed. When we talk about the GATC, they need to make sure that whatsoever equipment they are using it for testing, that needs to be calibrated annually with the to maintain the traceability with the national and international standards.
Absolutely. And Kushal is asking whether the loss of revenue is the reason why the process is not being standardized. Kushal, I can probably answer that question. Even in PUC, when you take a pollution control certificate from a third party, there is a money that you pay to the third party. Government can always have the third party pay a portion of that revenue back to the government. That arrangement can always happen because each one of them are certified test centers. They need to keep a record of how many vehicles they have certified on what day, what were the numbers of those vehicles, what were the photographs of their plates, the front plate, the back plate, the engine chassis number, the registration card. All of those details are collected at the time of certification, even for the PUC. There is no reason why government could not do a similar process for this also.
Rishi, let me be tell you bluntly, what's your feedback? I have got it from the different weighing manufacturers or the consumers also. They are ready to pay double the fee also. They are ready to pay double the fee. Even if the government doubles the fee and does this privatization, they are okay with that. Because the harassment and the time saved, which is there, which is an important part. So there will be no government revenue loss.
Sure. And there's an anonymous attendee who has asked a question. There are a few products available that don't require calibration, which did not exist at the time when the act was made. Are they covered under the act? Do they require calibration certificates? So I think this goes back before the act was created.
I don't think, because even if I've understood the question correct, that if there is an equipment of before 1976, but you need periodic inspections and verifications, depending on product to product, either 1 year or 2 year or 5 year. For example, for tank scales, it is 5 years. For a wave bridge, it is 1 year. So if any product, if you have bought it before that, that is not applicable. From the date of enforcement of the Legal Metrology Act, all those things, even on the previous equipment, also comes into the picture.
Excellent. Well, we are 3 minutes past 4 o'clock. I originally planned this session for only 45 minutes, but it looks like there's so much excitement, so much interest in our audience. There are a number of questions today around the complexity of regulations. People are excited about the reform process. So Basant, from the bottom of my heart, I want to extend a hearty thanks to you for taking the time today and sharing the wealth of experience that you've shared, the reform process, the best practices from international markets, a single license regime, government approved test centers, and privatization of testing so that additional capacity can be unleashed, and so on and so forth. Some really relevant items that government can pick up, start working on them to make Indian manufacturers a lot more competitive globally and to make India a key hub of manufacturing of weights and measures internationally.
So thank you very much, Rishi. It's my pleasure to join this chat, and I'm sure this should be useful. And we will certainly take it to the logical conclusion, and we will certainly make it available to the relevant government authorities also, so that they are also forced to think of doing the change.
So before we wrap up, I do want to take a minute and thank all our audience today for being a wonderful audience. There were over 100 people who were in attendance for the discussion today. I hope all of you have gained from this experience and you're taking some ideas for reform back with you. Let's keep working on it. Well begun is half done. Government has the right intention. All we need to do is keep talking about these items in a number of places, and someday someone will hear it and the job will get done. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.